We begin with Prime Minister Mark Carney's European tour. He's in Latvia today after stops in Poland and Germany. It's part of Canada's push to diversify trade and economic partnerships amid a trade war with the U.S.
Canada just announced a gas deal with Germany that directly challenges American energy dominance in Europe.
Prime Minister Mark Carney was welcomed to Berlin Tuesday morning by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz.
So Canada needs some allies right now as we're grappling with this situation with the United States and the trade war.
Prime Minister Mark Carney stood in Berlin promising liquefied natural gas exports to Germany within 5 years, despite Canada having zero operational Atlantic export terminals. This wasn't just a trade announcement, it was a deliberate message to Washington.
Canada positioned itself as Europe's fresh alternative to American power.
The message Canada sent through this Germany deal exposes a fundamental shift in North American geopolitics. While the United States secured $750 billion in European energy commitments, Canada positioned itself as an alternative supplier without the infrastructure to deliver.
Countries like Germany, Canada, partnership with the European Union can provide stability and prosperity for our citizens.
The announcement came during Carney's August visit to Berlin, where he met with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to finalize what both leaders called a historic energy partnership. But the real story isn't about what Canada promised Germany. It's about what this deal reveals regarding Canada's relationship with the United States.
Our government is in the process of unleashing $500 billion of investment in energy infrastructure, port infrastructure, particularly intelligence infrastructure as well, with AI.
The meetings between Carney and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz produced what appeared to be a breakthrough moment. Carney revealed that his government would soon announce $500 billion in investments targeting port infrastructure, specifically designed to facilitate energy exports to Europe. The announcement focused heavily on two locations, Churchill, Manitoba, and the Port of Montreal, with Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson claiming the first LNG shipment could reach Germany within 5 years.
Could you please explore a bit more what Canada can realistically actually offer to Germany and Europe, given the fact that ports on the East Coast and also pipelines are still lacking?
That 5-year timeline immediately raised questions among industry observers. Canada's history with major infrastructure projects suggests timelines routinely extend well beyond initial projections, particularly when regulatory approvals and environmental assessments enter the equation. Those questions become even more pressing when examining Churchill's actual capabilities. The port faces fundamental limitations that $500 billion cannot easily solve. From November through May, thick freshwater ice makes shipping impossible, limiting operations to a 4-month window between July and October. The harbor's compact size prevents container ships from turning around, requiring specialized navigation that adds complexity and cost to every shipment. Germany requires consistent, year-round energy supplies to power its industrial base. A port that operates only 4 months annually cannot serve that need, regardless of how much political will backs the project. Extending Churchill's operational season would require a fleet of icebreakers that Canada doesn't currently possess, along with ice management infrastructure that would take years to develop and billions to build.
A new port, effectively in Churchill, Manitoba, which would open up enormous LNG plus other opportunities and other East Coast ports for those critical metals and minerals.
The Montreal expansion carries its own complications. Carney's government promotes this investment, while European Union projections show declining natural gas demand across the continent. German energy policy specifically aims to reduce fossil fuel consumption through aggressive renewable energy targets and efficiency improvements. Why would Canada invest billions building export capacity for a market that publicly plans to shrink its consumption?
To new port infrastructure, and some of the examples in the public domain will include from reinforcing and building on the Port of Montreal.
These market realities help explain Germany's cautious response to Carney's proposals. While German officials expressed diplomatic enthusiasm during the Berlin meetings, their actions reveal different priorities. Venture Global finalized a 20-year agreement to supply 750,000 metric tons of LNG annually to Germany-based SEFE Energy, months before Carney's visit. That deal represents firm commercial commitment backed by operational infrastructure and proven delivery capacity.
Trump personally secured a massive deal with the European Union, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of American oil and gas guaranteed over the next few years.
The pattern continues with other American suppliers. Delfin LNG secured a 15-year contract with Germany's state-owned Securing Energy for Europe in March 2025, establishing another long-term supply relationship that predates Canada's involvement. These aren't speculative arrangements dependent on future infrastructure development. They're binding agreements with companies already shipping LNG to European ports.
Is there enough demand globally for U.S. gas? And you can see that we expect to be able to continue growth to Europe in terms of exports and Asia as well.
Germany's ambassador to Canada acknowledged this dynamic during subsequent interviews. He described huge potential for Canadian LNG exports, but emphasized that German companies ultimately decide procurement based on commercial viability. That careful phrasing signals professional skepticism dressed in diplomatic courtesy. German energy buyers evaluate reliability, cost, and delivery schedules. Canadian proposals currently lack competitive advantages in any of those categories.
It's certainly a very good partner to Canada and vice versa. And we have so much in common. We share so many values, but we also have a joint interest in the diversification of our trade routes.
Understanding Germany's procurement decisions requires examining what the United States already delivers. The American administration negotiated a comprehensive trade framework with the European Union that integrated energy sales into broader economic commitments. Under this arrangement, the EU pledged to increase purchases of American LNG as part of a $750 billion energy investment package designed to reduce European dependence on Russian supplies.
We know that Germany is buying millions of tons of LNG from the United States and Qatar, not Canada, as a result of really inaction by past governments on developing LNG. Would Germany be a customer for our liquefied natural gas if we did get our act together, if you will, and start producing some of this and sending it over to Europe?
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen publicly characterized these energy purchases as serving both economic and strategic security objectives. American LNG helps Europe diversify away from Russian gas while supporting transatlantic economic ties. That dual benefit gives U.S. energy exports political value beyond their commercial pricing.
Purchases of U.S. energy products will diversify our sources of supply and contribute to Europe's energy security.
The operational infrastructure supporting American exports reinforces this advantage. Multiple LNG terminals along the Gulf Coast connect to established shipping routes, storage facilities, and distribution networks that evolved over decades. American tankers deliver LNG to European ports daily, demonstrating proven capability rather than promised future capacity. This operational track record matters significantly more to German energy buyers than Carney's 5-year projections.
We will replace Russian gas and oil by significant purchases of U.S. LNG oil and nuclear fuels.
This operational disparity raises questions about Carney's actual objectives in Berlin. I think the announcement served domestic political needs at least as much as genuine trade ambitions. His government faces mounting pressure to demonstrate economic initiatives independent of American influence, particularly given ongoing trade tensions and tariff threats from Washington. Announcing a European energy partnership generates headlines suggesting Canada successfully diversified its economic relationships away from over-reliance on U.S. markets.
How much higher can we go from $30 billion? What's a reasonable expectation in terms of trade between our two countries as we move forward?
Well, actually, I think there's still room for improvement.
The critical minerals component of the Germany agreement carries more substance than the LNG discussions. Both countries committed to securing supply chains for rare earth elements, expanding research collaboration, and co-funding projects across defense, aerospace, and clean energy sectors. These initiatives build on existing trade relationships and don't require the massive infrastructure investments that LNG exports demand.
And critical minerals could be a cornerstone in this improvement, but also our cooperation in other areas. We have a lot of investments.
Canada's willingness to invest in energy infrastructure isn't theoretical. The Carney government allocated $200 million to the Cedar LNG project in March 2025, demonstrating concrete financial support for liquefied natural gas development. However, Cedar LNG in Kitimat targets Asian markets through Pacific shipping routes. The facility's geographic orientation toward Asia rather than Europe reveals where Canada's actual competitive advantages lie. That geographic mismatch between existing investments and announced ambitions drew immediate scrutiny from energy analysts. Industry observers questioned the fundamental business case for Atlantic LNG exports, noting that Canada faces a race against time to establish market presence before European demand declines further. Racing against time implies urgency, yet the infrastructure required cannot accommodate rapid development, regardless of political pressure.
So there is a lot happening. It's the number one focus of this government is to build that infrastructure, and particularly infrastructure that helps us deepen our partnership.
Former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau previously assessed the economics of European LNG exports and concluded no viable business case existed. His evaluation considered transatlantic shipping costs, terminal construction expenses, pipeline development requirements, and competitive pricing from established suppliers. Carney's government hasn't publicly addressed what changed beyond political leadership to justify different conclusions. The cost structure comparison favors American competitors significantly. Shipping LNG from Gulf Coast terminals to European markets costs substantially less than equivalent shipments from potential Canadian Atlantic facilities. Canada must build export terminals, expand port capacity, develop specialized shipping infrastructure, and establish supply chains that American companies completed years earlier. These investments total billions of dollars before the first shipment generates revenue.
As you know, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said there was no business case to sell liquefied natural gas to Europe. We are hearing a very different message from Prime Minister Carney today.
These cost disadvantages compound when considering European demand trajectories. Europe's energy landscape transformed following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with initial panic driving emergency LNG purchases. However, that crisis phase ended, replaced by strategic planning that assumes declining fossil fuel consumption. Germany leads European efforts to accelerate renewable energy adoption. While natural gas serves as a transition fuel, German energy policy explicitly targets reduced consumption over time. Canadian investments in Atlantic LNG export capacity would target a market that plans to shrink its fossil fuel imports. Local reactions in Churchill complicate development prospects. Residents express conflicted views about port expansions, welcoming employment opportunities while worrying about impacts on tourism and community character. This matters because major projects require local support to navigate approvals. Environmental opposition adds complexity. Climate Action Team Manitoba strongly opposed LNG exports through Churchill, arguing they would increase fossil fuel consumption and create oil spill risks in northern waters. Canadian energy projects routinely face environmental challenges that delay or cancel development. The port's northern location provides advantages for Arctic shipping, but creates disadvantages for European markets. Distance, seasonal ice, and limited operational windows impose constraints that southern ports avoid.
At least, and I see and I hear from the conversation that we are having with German companies that they do care about LNG. And we as the government certainly want to pave the way for any sort of imports.
Canada's only operational LNG facility illustrates timeline challenges. LNG Canada in Kitimat produced its first cargo in June 2025 after years of planning and construction. The facility demonstrates Canada can execute major energy infrastructure, but also reveals how long execution requires. Building Atlantic capacity would follow similar patterns. Canada's regulatory framework mandates environmental assessments, Indigenous consultations, and multiple approval levels before construction begins.
But LNG imports we are doing already, so we are there, and I hope that Canada would also fulfill.
These practical constraints frame the broader strategic implications of Carney's Germany initiative. The announcement signals Canada seeking reduced economic dependence on American markets, a goal driven partly by U.S. tariff threats and trade tensions that motivated Ottawa to diversify trading partnerships. Energy exports to Europe represent one potential diversification avenue, at least conceptually. However, Canada enters European energy markets without the infrastructure advantages it enjoys in Asia-Pacific trade. American suppliers already established market presence, customer relationships, and delivery capacity that new entrants cannot easily disrupt. This competitive disadvantage differs fundamentally from Asian markets, where Canada's geographic proximity and existing trade ties provide natural benefits.
Our governments will be spending, rightly, a great deal of money to make our citizens more secure, to make the world more secure, to work with our allies to make the world more secure.
Germany recognizes these dynamics and maintains productive relationships with both North American countries while prioritizing its own energy security above diplomatic considerations. Berlin won't reject Canadian proposals outright, but neither will German energy buyers abandon reliable American suppliers for uncertain Canadian future deliveries. The calculus remains fundamentally commercial despite political overlays. Carney's 5-year timeline for first shipments represents optimistic projection rather than realistic assessment based on Canadian energy project history. Previous infrastructure initiatives routinely exceeded initial schedules, as regulatory reviews uncovered complications, environmental assessments identified concerns, and legal challenges delayed approvals. Pipeline proposals in particular faced years of administrative and judicial processes before construction could begin.
Because as we said in the beginning, the diversification, especially in LNG imports, is of relevance to us as well.
Atlantic Coast LNG terminals would navigate similar approval pathways. Environmental impact assessments alone typically require multiple years before reaching conclusions. Indigenous consultation processes demand substantial time to address community concerns and negotiate benefit-sharing arrangements. Financing packages must be assembled from investors requiring certainty about demand, pricing, and regulatory stability. Construction follows these preliminary phases, meaning 5 years covers only a fraction of the actual development timeline.
We have done our homework. We're working on the relevant import infrastructure and our ports, so we're getting ready for everything.
American suppliers strengthen their European market position during this extended Canadian development period. Each year of delay allows U.S. companies to deepen customer relationships, optimize supply chains, and secure longer-term contracts that reduce market space available for future Canadian entries. Carney characterized his infrastructure plans using nation-building rhetoric, suggesting significant public investment expectations. This implies taxpayer funding rather than purely private investment, raising questions about appropriate government roles in commercial energy projects.
But anybody watching closely knows the story. It doesn't add up. Trudeau once waved off the idea of LNG exports to Europe because the math isn't there.
Private investors approach these projects cautiously. Financial backing requires confidence in long-term demand, competitive pricing, and regulatory certainty. Without firm German purchase commitments, attracting private capital proves difficult. Government subsidies can fill gaps, but intensify scrutiny regarding economic justification. I believe Carney's Germany announcement functioned primarily as political theater rather than realistic economic strategy. The symbolism of standing in Berlin generated domestic headlines demonstrating action on trade diversification. That political value exists independently from commercial viability.
East Coast projects have been scrapped one after another. The shiny new facility in Kitimat, remember that one? It's designed for Asia, not Europe, and every pipeline needed to make this vision real is still caught in years.
Reality demands infrastructure investment, confirmed market demand, competitive pricing, and achievable delivery timelines that Canada cannot currently demonstrate. Germany maintains diplomatic courtesy while continuing to secure energy from American sources, offering proven reliability. Canada's optimal path requires realistic assessment of competitive advantages. Critical minerals partnerships with Germany offer concrete collaboration potential, LNG exports to Europe face substantial obstacles that 5-year timelines cannot overcome without addressing fundamental economic realities. The broader strategic question concerns Canada's positioning within North American energy markets. Attempting to compete against American LNG exports to Europe potentially diverts resources from Asian market opportunities where Canada enjoys geographic advantages and established trade relationships.
German industry leaders, the ones who actually have to keep factories running? They start raising questions about whether Canada could even supply what Carney promised. Shipping LNG across the Atlantic is expensive. Building new export terminals takes years.
This Germany gas deal reveals the gap between political announcements and economic reality. If this analysis provided value, subscribe for more fact-based breakdowns of international trade and energy developments, and share your thoughts on Canada's energy export strategy in the comments below. Is this not more powerful? Like the video and hit the subscribe button to get more updates.